Boo! Yeah, this is another one of those spooky intros. Anyway, how's it going, guys? It's Nate here, and to call Skyrim a large game may be a bit of an understatement. A title that gives us a massive open world rich in stories to hear, people to meet, and things to do. But as is the case with any Elder Scrolls game, Skyrim is also a land that leaves us asking many questions that the canon lore fails to address. As a result, the community has developed a plethora of interesting theories and fascinating hypothetical explanations to describe what the game won't or can't. So today we'll be taking a look at 5 more amazing, strange, and spooky theories in The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Part 6. Starting off, this one's one of my favorites we've ever covered. The first theory concerns the Dark Brotherhood. Specifically, it argues that the children of Honorall Orphanage will be its next generation of assassins. Let me explain. At the end of the Brotherhood's questline, the only surviving assassins are yourself, the Redguard Nazir, the vampiric child Babette, and maybe Cicero. That's it. You three, or 4, are the only members left of this once mighty guild in all of Tamriel. Furthermore, even if you opted to destroy the faction rather than join it, both Babette and Cicero will survive anyway, as they won't be present during your assault on the Sanctuary. No matter what you choose to do though, the guild will survive in the Elder Scrolls V. However, be severely depopulated. Seriously, at one point they had sanctuaries all across the continent. Now, they're down to 1. So clearly, if anyone wishes to see it live on, some recruiting is desperately needed. Well, the first Dark Brotherhood contract you're given, of course before you actually join or even know much about the guild, begins when a young runaway orphan named Aventus Arentino mistakes you for one of their assassins, and requests that you murder Grella the Kind to death, the inappropriately named headmistress of the orphanage he once lived at. She's quite an evil woman, and your first introduction to her will be listening in as the elderly lady scolds the children she's supposed to be caring for, threatening beatings and swearing they will never be adopted because nobody wants them. So killing her probably won't be a very hard thing to bring yourself to do. After she dies and the quest is completed, the real Brotherhood obviously finds out, and they're a tad upset, beginning the Dark Brotherhood questline in earnest. That said, immediately after Grella's death, the children in her orphanage will start cheering, but they won't just celebrate the death of their former headmistress. They'll also sing the praises of the Dark Brotherhood. This theory argues that with the DB in desperate need of members by the end of the events of the Elder Scrolls V, these kids could very well be the ones to refill its ranks. They all have a pretty high opinion of the organization, viewing them as their saviors. They have years to train, and it's not like they have families or jobs to worry about whenever they do leave the orphanage, making them the perfect candidates. Babette, one of the guild's only guaranteed survivors, being a vampiric child, also sort of fits into this narrative well, of the Brotherhood being rebuilt by a bunch of kids. No matter what happens, the organization of assassins is down to no more than 4 people, and needs to get new members from somewhere. Next on our list, among Skyrim's more interesting mysteries, is why there are no Falmer on Solstheim, and why there are no Reiklings on Skyrim itself. Long ago, before it became an island, Solstheim was connected to Skyrim. But in the battles that occurred during Mirek's failed uprising against his dragon overlords, the region was separated and pushed into the Sea of Ghosts. The Falmer, of course, are an odd offshoot of the Snow Elves, whom, after being brought to the brink of extinction by Nordic invaders thousands of years ago, sought refuge with the Dwemer, under the condition that they consume a mysterious blue fungus that took away their sight. Generations of eating this fungus, in combination with underground life, transformed them into these disgusting creatures we now know and love. With Falmer pockets being found in caves all across Skyrim, and considering the fact that they joined the dwarves long before Solstheim became an island, while it was still a part of the mainland, it doesn't make much sense why there's no Falmer there too. Well, some suspect that there's a good reason they're not around. Reiklings. The Falmer of Solstheim were brought to extinction by the pesky blue munchkins. Much like the deformed snow elves, Reiklings also have a love for occupying vast caves, and assuming they were both around at the same time, this almost certainly would have opened up potential for a serious series of conflicts. Conflicts the Reiklings won. Now, these angry Smurfs are shrouded in mystery themselves. We don't know much about the Reiklings regarding their origins or their society structure. In fact, in the Elder Scrolls 3's Blood Moon DLC, we learn that the Skull Nords indeed believe that they're the ancestors of the Snow Elves too. So one could also reasonably think that these two types of creatures are related to each other. Maybe when Solstheim split, the Falmer here weren't mysteriously killed off, but instead just started to evolve a bit differently. Whatever the true story here is, only the Reiklings may know, and the Reiklings aren't talking. At least, not in words that we can understand. Coming in at number 3, the Dragon Cult is what we refer to as the government of dragons and their priests that ruled over the Nords of Skyrim and Atmora from the beginning of the Merethic era up until the Nords rebelled shortly before the First Era. Like so much else we've discussed today already, we're missing quite a bit of information about the Dragon Cult. Apparently during this time, dragons held all the power in society, though they didn't have much concern for the affairs of their mortal subjects regarding day-to-day life. So they delegated most of the actual ruling and administration of their empire, if you want to call it that, to loyal dragon priests, who worshipped the beasts and managed their lands and people for them, writing laws, collecting taxes, doing government stuff. Eventually, our Nordic friends grew sick and tired of living under what they considered to be an oppressive regime, and revolted, sparking a war creatively named the Dragon War, in which, after much bloodshed, the Dovas were expelled from Skyrim, and their followers mostly killed. However, something many have called into question is why didn't the Nords revolt sooner? Well, we already sort of know the answer to this one. From what we know, initially life under the Dragon Cult wasn't really that bad, at least in the beginning, and everyone sort of got along. Sure, the priests and dragons weren't democratically elected or anything, but they were fair and kept everyone safe. It wasn't until shortly before the revolt that, for some reason, the dragon priests grew tyrannical, ruling more harshly, executing their subjects without trial, and even reverting to human sacrifices. Practices the dragons themselves either couldn't be bothered to stop or outright encouraged. So now one might ask, why the change in demeanor? What caused the dragons and their priests to turn from these relatively alright leaders into tyrants? As you may guess, we don't know. However, many in the Elder Scrolls community point to Mirek. You see, right around the time the dragons started becoming full-blown dictators, Mirek, who of course at the time was one of their priests, attempted to seize power from them and started a war of his own. Do keep in mind, Mirek wasn't revolting for the sake of the people or common good or anything like that. He just wanted to become a king/god in his own right. Remember, this conflict is what created Solstheim. In due time, Mirek lost, badly, fled to oblivion, and the dragons remained in power. Though, some suspect that this war is what led to the Dragon Cult really cracking down on their subjects. Now aware that their power could be directly challenged, perhaps Skyrim's dragon overlords became more strict to maintain their authority. Obviously, if this was the case, it backfired tremendously, but I never said they were geniuses. Additionally, if the cult was truly evil before the time of Mirek, why didn't the Nords back him? Yeah, he was only in it for himself, but surely if they were even half as bad as everyone claims, Mirek could have been perceived as a much better alternative. So, while the Dragon Priest was ultimately defeated in his failed uprising, maybe his actions indirectly led to one that achieved much better results. For a fourth spot, during the Dawnguard DLC questline, if you side with the Dawnguard against the vampires, the player will be given a quest to rescue a priest of Arche named Florentius Banius from an evil mage holding him as prisoner, so that he might be able to join the fight against the undead. After he's been saved, Florentius will remain in Fort Dawnguard for the remainder of the game, and additionally help out in a few more quests. Though, Mr. Banius has an interesting quirk. He claims that Arche, the divine he preaches on behalf of, actually speaks to him, like directly talks to the guy. This comes off as a bit abnormal to say the least. Divines like Arche, while they do occasionally communicate with mortals, they don't do it very often. And when they do, it's usually someone of extreme importance, i.e. the Dragonborn. Generally, it's the Daedric Lords who joy in speaking to mortals. Suffice to say, Florentius is presented by Bethesda as pretty insane. He appears to lack any self-awareness about how odd such a gift is, and can't help but bring up how often Arke speaks with him in every conversation. The other members of the Dawn Guard also go so far as to openly express doubt about the man in conversations behind his back. I mean, heck, if Arke's going to speak to anybody, why not you? Or, again, someone of higher importance. That all said, the man certainly seems to be getting some divine help. He's immune to vampire seduction, constantly has knowledge of Volkihar secrets he simply shouldn't. For those of you who don't know, Laurentis is the guy who gives members of the Dawn Guard quests to rescue people from vampires, thanks to Arke supposedly telling him where they're being held, and a whole lot more. This awkward combination of serious doubts about Laurentis' claims, yet him clearly receiving some godly help, has provoked many a Dragonborn to speculate that perhaps the man is in contact with a god, just not the one that he thinks. Instead, the suspicion has emerged that Laurentis is talking to Sheogorath, Daedric Prince of Insanity, who is simply pretending to be Arke. For Sheogorath, being of course the god of crazy and constantly interfering within the affairs of mortals, this would definitely fit his character. Laurentis' crazy demeanor is what most lends credibility to this idea. What Sheo's motivations for selecting this man in particular could be are unclear. We're not very sure what his relationship, if any, is to Arke, nor Molag Bal, the Daedric god responsible for creating vampires in the first place. Perhaps he just thought it would be funny to bother one person just for the sake of it. Though there are examples of Sheogorath doing this type of thing before, though. The book, Chance's Folly, tells the tale of a warrior woman who outwits a thief thanks to being in conversation with Sheogorath. So, could Laurentis be another example of this behavior? Perhaps. Only Sheogorath may know the truth. And finally, last on our list, Seville Stentor is Solitude's court wizard, though that's far from the most interesting thing about her, as the mysterious mage is also, secretly, a vampire. This fact is obvious to anyone who uses a detect undead spell in her presence. And other characters close to her also allude to the possibility that this woman is very much a bloodsucker. Furthermore, if that's still not enough for you, in the game's file she's assigned to the vampire race, so there you go. Now, despite not being immortal, Seville doesn't come off as especially evil, nor does she appear to have any malevolent intentions. In fact, Seville looks to just want to be left alone to her experiments. Though, unfortunately for the people of Skyrim, looks can be deceiving. You see, in the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion, we learn of a particularly powerful order of vampires that some believe Seville may secretly be working for, as she demonstrates many of the characteristics of its members. The Cyrodiil Vampirum Order is an organization of, well, vampires we can be introduced to in a book titled Manifesto Cyrodiil Imperium that can be found in Deepscorn Hollow in the Violair DLC for Oblivion. Being a manifesto, the book was written by a member of the clan, and it describes their order as a society of more cunning undead, that don't just take over a cave and eat people like is the norm for most of their kind, but instead intermingle with normal society and try to manipulate it. Their code of conduct reads, quote, "To preserve our ideals and way of life, 2 primary edicts shall be observed. Above all, reveal thyself and our order to no other. For discretion is the greatest of our virtues. Do not feed where you may be found out, nor on those who may not suspect your passing. Avoid daylight by lifestyle. Dispel common belief in our kind, and maintain supple appearance through satisfaction of the thirst. Second, devote your pursuits to the procurement of influence, political and otherwise. Our strength is not in physical numbers, but in skillful manipulation of society. Always be mindful of our patrons and observe the order. Devote yourself to these ideals, always, and the order shall count you amongst our own." End quote. Now, aside from this book, we know absolutely nothing about this order of vampires. We never face off against them, nor do we even meet one of their members in-game. At least, none that we know of. But 200 years after Oblivion and when this book was written, in Skyrim, Seville seems to be following that code to a T. She holds a powerful political position. Her status is suspected by some, but completely unknown to most. And even upon your first entry to the Blue Palace, we can hear her advise the Jarl against sending soldiers to investigate a cave, as locals are under the impression it's infested with either necromancers or vampires. Possibly this was Seville attempting to dispel belief in her kind as instructed. It's possible that after 2 centuries, this mysterious organization expanded outside of Cyrodiil's borders into Skyrim or even beyond, and that Seville is just another pawn in their game. But with that, we are going to wrap up. 5 more spooky theories in The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Thanks for coming, everyone. Which of what we talked about today did you find to be the most fascinating or intriguing? And what are your own theories or alternative explanations behind some of the happenings in Skyrim that I've yet to cover? Leave a comment down below. As always, like ratings are very much appreciated. Again, thanks for watching, and hope to catch you all in my next video. Peace out, everybody.